Hi, this is Kevin. As luck would have it, there was a glitch with Greg's mic this week when we recorded. So what you're going to hear is a truncated version of the show, at least his portion of it. And when you do hear him, know he's not underwater and it's not your listening device that's screwing up. It's us. So please bear with it and we'll get things fixed again before next week. Welcome to the More Perfect Union, the podcast that offers real debate without the hate. Sponsored by BetterHelp.com. Hi, I'm Kevin Kelton, and as always, I'm joined this week by Greg Matusak and Ward Anderson. Plus, we have a special guest this week, Emily Galati. Ward, why don't you tell our listeners how you know Emily?
Let me just say that she is a hilarious comedian from the Chicago area, but tours all over North America. If you have not had the opportunity to see her, I recommend you do. She is one of the best comedians of her generation or any other. But on top of that, one of the most creative writers you will ever see. Emily Galati is joining us as the fourth mic this week. Hello, Emily.
Hello. Thank you for having me. That was such a great introduction. It's too much, but thank you.
Well, you and I have known each other a good while. I mean, you and I have known each other now for about, I guess, a good 10 years or so, right?
Something like that, yeah. We took a 12-hour drive from Minneapolis to small town North Dakota through the night.
Right?
Been friends ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back in the road comic days.
Yeah.
We eventually wound up in Fargo, right? Fargo, North Dakota, I think was the ultimate destination. But I had to fly into, I guess, Minneapolis, and then you picked me up and we drove to Fargo from there or something.
Yeah, way past Fargo and then back to Fargo, yeah. It was a great time.
So this week, before we get into the news of the week, and we will cover the news of the week, but before we do all of that, I wanted to report back. You know, we didn't do a show last week. Our loyal fans know that we were missing in action last week, and I take full responsibility. I was away on vacation helping to celebrate my mom's 100th birthday in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I'm back to tell you we had a great party. And I was surprised. You know, you would think you go to a restaurant and you say, hey, we're here for a 100th birthday. You'd think you'd be the only ones there celebrating someone's 100th birthday. Not in Florida. No. You get waiters and waitresses yawning while they're singing happy birthday to the 100-year-old person.
They're all in an improv troupe. They're all like, yes, and...
So I did some research on it to find out how rare my mom is. Of course, she's totally rare because she's my mom. But it turns out that there are somewhere between 92,000 and up to 100,000 people, 100 or more, just in the United States. And they project that come around 2060, there may be as many as 590,000 people who are 100 or more years old. So my question to the three of you is...
Fucking boomers.
Yeah, all boomers. Do we all these days, does everybody have a shot at a 100-year lifespan? Greg, do you think you've got a shot at it?
I changed my diet. I changed my exercise. Yeah, of course. Your mother's it's like she's in great health and spirits.
Well, she is. And what I found out doing a little bit of research is, you know, people think that people that live to be 100, 102, 104, that they're decrepit. Actually, it's the opposite. They tend to be in very good health, and they tend to have fewer health issues than people who don't make it that age.
Because we have health issues now.
Yeah. I'm almost 65 years old. I know, Emily, your jaw's going to drop when you hear that. But my brother pointed out at dinner the other night at her birthday party that the last time she was in a hospital was when she gave birth to me.
Oh, wow.
So think about that.
Yeah.
And Emily, what do you think? Do you have another 80 years to go?
I hope not. I am.
She didn't get that joke.
Do I have another 80 years? Listen, the amount of things that make me want to take a nap now, and I'm in my mid-30s, like I can't imagine being 95 or 99 and then like still running errands. I'd be tired all the time. I don't want it.
I don't think they run errands at 99.
I don't know. I'm just saying. It's too long. I think it's too long for me.
Ward, what about you? Do you have any longevity in your family?
I wake up every day, and within 15 minutes, I'm excited. And I'm excited all day until I go to bed. And all I can say is that I'm going to be like this until I die at 100, or I can't afford the cocaine anymore. But one of those two.
Well, there you go. Well, I know that's how she got as far as she did. Actually, a few years ago, my friend Mark and I decided, we should document my mom. He set up his video camera and we did some interviews. I was talking to her. And at one point he said, she was talking about drugs or something. I don't know. And Mark said, well, I have some grass in the apartment. Will you want to try some? I actually smoked a doobie with my mom when she was like 96 or 97 years old. It was pretty cool.
I just want to point out to everybody real quick how old this show is, because Kevin just said, I got some grass. And then he followed it up in the same breath with, so I smoked a doobie with my mom. And by the way, he thought that made him look young and cool, when in actuality,
yes, I did.
I actually did cocaine with his mom, which is way fucking cooler than him smoking a doobie of grass with her. I just want to say
Okay. Ward, okay. First of all, this is not a contest. If it was me doing Molly with his mom.
We did math together.
Oh, jeez.
And now you know how she lived to be 100.
Yeah.
There you go.
You guys wouldn't believe this, but Kevin's mom loves Dave Matthews Band. It's fucking insane. It's crazy.
Okay, well, speaking of people who were really, really old, Joe Biden addressed a joint session of Congress this week.
Up past his bedtime.
And way past his bed. Actually, it started pretty late. I don't know why it started so late. So, Greg, what was your takeaway from the speech? The tax hikes on big business.
First of all, what I really liked about it was his economic plans. Okay, infrastructure, transportation, tax credits, child family, in-home care. That's kind of awesome. That's what I got from this. So I'm happy that the progressives were pretty happy. The people who weren't happy were the GOP, who were thinking, do we ban some more trans athletes? Because, shit, why not?
You covered a lot of area there.
Yeah, trust me. I've been holding that in like 2 weeks. This is what happens when you go on vacation.
Ward, did you watch any of the show? Any of the speech?
You know what? The only people that couldn't be happy with this are people that are just fed up with all these hippies with their grass who were smoking doobies all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the liberals smoking doobies. Emily, what about you?
Oh, man,
You were just telling us before the show, and I think probably 80% of people, we got to this thing right after the election where it's like, you mean I don't have to watch 4 hours of MSNBC every day?
Yeah.
I can actually live my life now?
I should be more informed than I am, but yeah, I was very happy to skip it. Also, I am so not in the mood to listen to politicians talk about what they might do or what they plan to do, and I just want to hear about it when you do it. That's kind of my philosophy.
That's a pretty good philosophy.
Yeah.
Tim Scott gave the GOP rebuttal. Oh, God, was he annoying. Oh, gosh, was he annoying.
Tell me, what'd you find annoying about it?
Well, he starts by saying, you probably watched President Biden give his speech tonight, and he seems like a nice guy. But when you get into it, it's like, when he said it that way, he seems like a nice guy. That kind of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. He's not really, but he gives off that impression. Oh, man. Right from there, colored it in the wrong way for me. And then it went from there. It went downhill, where just everything was about big government and lies and taking over your lives and spending too much money. And the GOP tax plan was so great. The Trump tax cuts were so great. All that stuff. It was awful.
What did you think about when he said America is not a racist country?
That pissed me off. Yeah, because it is a racist country.
See, okay. Because he's gotten a lot of flack, but I don't think the country as a whole is tainted racist. And
okay, well, you know what? I'm going to take back my statement. It was probably too strong.
No, you're right.
We have some racist tendencies.
Yes,
we have some pockets of racism.
Yes.
We have systemic racism in a lot of our organizations.
Preach.
Okay, so I'll take back the racist country and I'll say it's a loving country that sometimes has a problem with black people. It's also a sexist country, an ageist country, a body-shaming country, and what else could I throw in there? And we eat too much meat.
Wait a second. I'd like to know what Emily thinks about it, because she's the one woman here, right? And it's the Republican response, and they lost the female vote big time in the last election. So I'm kind of curious as to what she thinks about it.
What do you want me to listen to a Republican speak as a female? No, I don't want to. I don't know what else you want me to say about that. I was also saving my big female moment for the Elizabeth Warren bullet point.
Oh, good. Yeah, we'll get to her too.
To bring it out now.
No. Save the big guns. Let's go.
Yeah. My only thing that I would say in this is when you're like, I'll back off on saying it's a racist country, but we do have problems in these areas. Like, to me, just sometimes racist is still racist. Like, I don't know where you make that distinction.
We never have any problem saying we're a majority something positive, no matter what it is, right? So whenever we're talking, we're always like, we're a majority blank country. So it could be like, a majority of Americans believe in being charitable. Okay.
Yeah.
A majority of Americans are Protestant, or do you know what I mean? Like, these are things that we just put out there like, this is actually true. A majority of Americans believe that, blah, 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 blah. So we always proudly say that. But then when it comes to things like racism and sexism, we'll go, okay, I don't think that most people are, I'm just saying that a lot of people are, right? But it's only with the negative stuff. It's kind of one of those things I've begun to notice when we talk about police brutality or these police shootings or whatever. And I told my wife this recently. I said, it's the only career that I know of that we feel the need to preference that we're okay with the rest of it before we talk about it or criticize it. No one is ever going to talk about like a bad movie they saw. They go, I saw this movie last night. Let me tell you, this thing was some bullshit. Okay. All right. Look, I know most screenwriters are good screenwriters. Okay. Most screenwriters, they work hard. They want to have a good script. They just want a good movie put out there. All right. But there's some bad apples. All right. There's some bad apples out there. All right. And it's police officers, the only thing we do that with. And we do the same thing with when it comes to criticizing America. We go, we're number one in this shit right here. And I'm not saying everybody's racist. I'm just saying maybe there's a good bit.
I have nothing against drug dealers and pushers. It's just the bad apples. It's the ones that sell drugs that I don't like. But as a people, I know that they mean to be doing good. The other thing that I took away from this address, and it's funny because I actually thought this on my own for a few days, and then this morning I see editorials of the New York Times or op-eds in the New York Times making this same point, and I get really pissed off that the New York Times is actually tapping my thoughts. And they've been doing it for years, by the way. Where is that goddamn public option that he's been talking about? He talked about all through the campaign. I was with him then. It was the contrast to Medicare for all. He kept talking about we need to make Obamacare stronger. We need to add a public option. I believe in a Medicare buy-in as the public option. Biden doesn't quite describe it that way, but he just uses the term public option. Why has that not been a part of this bill? What is he waiting for?
Oh, I'll answer that. It's a bill killer. It's a bill killer.
Well, we may not have a public option yet, but we do have an option for people that are struggling with their mental well-being these days. That's right. We want to welcome them back as our sponsor, BetterHelp.com, the online dating web. Did I say online dating?
You did.
Talk about your Freudian slips. The online therapy website that helps you identify what's holding you back in life and helps you begin to achieve your goals. BetterHelp will match you with your own licensed professional therapist, and they'll connect you in a safe and private online environment that makes it really convenient. And you can start communicating with your therapist in under 24 hours. The other thing that I like about BetterHelp.com is they have a broad range of experts available in different therapy areas and modalities, experts who may not be locally available in your area. They have licensed professional counselors who are specialized in depression, LGBT matters, stress, trauma, grief, anxiety, anger, self-esteem issues, relationships, and family conflicts. And as a More Perfect Union listener, you could get 10% off your first month by visiting our sponsor at BetterHelp.com/moreperfect. That's our promo code, the words more perfect with no space between them. So if you go to BetterHelp.com/moreperfect, you can get 10% off your first month, and you can hopefully start to get your life back on track. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/moreperfect. So, with that in mind, here's the part of the show that we've been kind of holding back because it's kind of like the headliner. We're going to discuss Elizabeth Warren's new book. Okay, first of all, has anyone here... Well, it hasn't even been released yet, so no one could have read it, right?
No, I didn't know it's been released yet. No.
So, but she's starting to make the rounds, getting interviewed about it. And, my takeaway from what I've heard about it and what she has said about it in her interviews is that she focuses quite a bit on her run for president in the 2020 primaries and the fact that she did not prevail. And she seems, at least from the clips and interviews that I've been exposed to, she seems to be saying that a lot of it has to do with misogyny. I'm somewhat skeptical on that. But Emily, I have a feeling that you're going to disagree with me on this point. What do you think?
I think 1,000% Elizabeth Warren is correct, without a doubt. Can I blame her entire loss on it? I don't know how much I can blame on it, but a huge chunk for sure. To have to sit through 2016 and listen to every man tell me they just don't want to vote for Hillary Clinton. Like, they'll vote for a woman, just not Hillary Clinton. Like, I'd vote for Elizabeth Warren in a heartbeat. I'd do it in a heartbeat. And when 2020 comes around, every one of those guys is like, oh, she's secretly a Republican. Oh, really? Is that really the issue now? She's masquerading as a Republican? Because 4 years ago, she was your queen. I don't know what's happened. Like, it's just, without a doubt, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in. First of all, let me say that there was, at some point, I was on the Elizabeth Warren bandwagon.
I remember that.
At first, I wanted Biden. And then when Biden, lost 3 or 4 primaries in a row and we were on this podcast, and frankly, I came out and said there's no way he's going to get the nomination. So that shows what I know. But at that point, I was rooting for Elizabeth, and she was always my second choice. That said, I think the reason that she did not get the nomination, and I'm not saying there was no misogyny. Of course, there's some misogyny involved in it. Anytime a woman aspires to high office, there's going to be issues of misogyny. As we said earlier in the show, it's a misogynistic, sexist country. But the reason that I think that she didn't get traction was because the party as a whole felt that going too far left in this particular election cycle was going to allow Trump to be reelected. And to me, she fell flat when she went so far left that she embraced Medicare for all without a plan to pay for it. And then when she came up with a plan to pay for it, it was immediately exposed as not making any sense. and the rest of her ideas, which again, I would have been thrilled if I could have pressed a button and made one person in that whole group of candidates president. I would have in a heartbeat pressed the Elizabeth Warren button and made her president. But I didn't think that she could be elected. I thought she wasn't electable. Now, you may say, Emily, well, Kevin, that's your misogyny coming through. And maybe it is. But I felt the same way about Bernie Sanders, and I felt the same way about several other candidates. So, that's my take. Obviously, it's an opinion. There's no right or wrong, but that's how I saw it.
I think she even says she thinks America was reluctant to run a woman after 2016. And I think that's true. And I think that's going to sting women for a long time after this. Any woman running for president is going to be harmed by that memory of what happened with Hillary and then who we got as she lost. So I think that's right.
Okay. Yeah. Ward, what do you think?
I think we're all pretty much in agreement here. I got to be honest with you. I mean,
we are.
Well, I mean, I think we are. I think we all agree that there's misogyny at play because there always is a little bit of that, just like we talked about. You know what I mean? And at the same time, Kevin, I agree with you that Elizabeth Warren, whether we agree or not, right? I'm very liberal, but whether we agree or not, talking about how the American voting public is, she went too left, too fast, too soon, whatever. Not for me, but for the DNC, for everyone else. Yeah. And that was the issue. The same issue, by the way, that I have with Bernie Sanders, like you do, despite the fact that I like Bernie Sanders, right? I'm as liberal as they come, but I'm also as realistic as they come. And I'm always paying attention to the average American voter. I know the average American voter, even the average American liberal voter, is not as liberal as me. And so I've learned to accept when something goes too far left of that. And it may be okay with me, but I know it's not going to be with most.
Well, let me ask this, and I'm going to put you on the spot, Emily. Be honest. There's no right or wrong. I'm just curious as to your opinion. Do you think if Elizabeth Warren had gotten the nomination, do you think she could have beaten Trump in the general?
I think anyone should have been able to beat Trump.
Not shoulda, woulda.
I also think anyone in that year, I don't think it matters. I don't think it mattered who you ran. I don't think anyone was undecided before we had a candidate. I think it didn't matter who was that nominating person. I do think, I don't think you lost anyone.
I actually think she would have lost worse than Clinton because
I do too.
I think that was a period where Republicans were looking for meanness and cruelty, and they got it in Trump. And I think that towards Elizabeth Warren, they would have been actually meaner.
For sure.
I know it sounds crazy to say it would have been meaner than they would have been with Clinton because they've always hated the Clintons or whatever. But Clinton has that kind of, Hillary Clinton always had that kind of badass, don't fuck with me kind of, this is who I am kind of thing. I see the Republicans as playing off of Elizabeth Warren's decorum as a weakness and going after her. And I see that would have hurt her because 2016, I really do feel was the year Republicans embraced meanness and cruelty.
I think that's correct. Did you know one undecided voter in 2020?
And it actually pisses me off because I remember watching the news like in a month or two leading up to it, where they would go to some podunk town and walk into that diner and then come up to the guy who just walked in from his truck and he's having himself lunch. And they're like, who you think you're going to vote for, Jed? And he'd go, probably Trump. And you go, shut the fuck up with your probably bullshit.
Probably.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you're not supposed to say that. It's funny when Republicans go, you're not supposed to say this. It's not politically correct to say this. Ready? Well, I'm going to be politically incorrect when I say this. Yeah. Dumb fucking redneck hayseed dipshits voted for Trump. There's no probably, Jed. We knew who you were voting for.
Biden won the primary, so I can't say nobody wanted to vote for him. But he definitely wasn't my first choice. Yeah, who wanted Biden? Who's happy with Biden? Who's like ecstatic about this presidency?
I'm telling you, your sample size, whatever it is, Emily, whether it's 50 of your friends or whether it's 5,000 people that you've spoken to, I'm going to add one person to your sample size that's going to go against, that I'm a little contrarian on that. I wanted Joe Biden from the beginning. I was thrilled in 2019 when he announced I thought he'd make a great president. And by the way, and I have friends who felt that too. So, okay, yeah, I'm an older white male and it's a different demographic. But listen, you don't win the nomination if there aren't people who are passionate about you. There were people out there calling for him to the extent they were allowed to, knocking on doors, writing on the internet for him. So this idea that he had no support, yes, there were a lot of people that said, I'll vote for him, but he's not my first choice. But there were enough people that he was their first choice. And just one more thing I want to say, Ward, I think you made a reference to this. The idea that there were no potential Trump voters that changed their vote or would have changed their vote back to Trump if Elizabeth Warren had been the nominee. Again, I can speak just anecdotally. It's not scientific, but certainly in Open Fire and in other political discussions that I was in online, I came across enough so-called never Trumpers who were waffling if Elizabeth Warren had gotten the nomination. And I can mention a couple of names to you right now, Ward, that you would know, that people who said, I won't vote for Trump, but if Elizabeth Warren's the nominee, I won't vote for her either. So
yeah. And you know what? I think people need to look at this and in an optimistic way, but in a realistic way. And here it is. You ready? Joe Biden is Wings. Okay? He's Wings.
Yeah.
We all liked Wings. It wasn't our favorite sitcom. It wasn't the first choice that we had.
He's not Seinfeld. He's not mad about
But we liked Wings.
He's not Frasier.
Wings.
Yeah.
Wings made us feel comfortable. Wings was sandwiched between bad and good. We knew that Wings was there. If what came before or after Wings was shit, at least we knew that Wings was probably fine.
I think Ward is right. Like, Biden is the exact palate cleanser we need. He's going to be kind of boring, but it's always going to be that consistent, like, I can deal with this. Like, that's great.
But I do have to ask this of Kevin, okay, because you have myself here, a comedian and writer and screenwriter.
Allegedly. Okay.
Okay. I've got some pay stubs. Okay, but then you have Emily Galati here, who, by the way, if you guys have not done so yet, if you go to YouTube, Emily Galati, you can see her numerous TV appearances, including on Conan, I believe. And did you also do The Late Late Show? Which show was it?
No, just Conan, Last Comic Standing, Gotham Live.
Yeah. No, but there's some very funny clips, seriously. And I would not say that because I value my reputation as a connoisseur of comedy, but you made me laugh, Emily.
Oh,
but anyways,
thank you.
what you were saying.
Well, I want to ask you this because your heyday of TV writing, we started off earlier. I mentioned The Facts of Life and Cloris Leachman.
By the way, it was a hey hour, but go ahead.
So what I want to know is, I was thinking about this because Seinfeld really ended it. They really did, because they made a big deal over how they wouldn't do this. But you wrote sitcoms in the 80s, and did you guys get the notes? Did they get a notes where they're like, we need a very special episode. We got to have an episode. One of these kids has to have AIDS. One of these kids needs AIDS, Kevin. It's time.
Never got that note, but it usually went to the executive producer. It didn't go to the full writing staff. But yes, they would let you know we need a sweeps episode that's big enough to go with what Friends is doing or what Frasier's doing, or they wanted a theme episode. Yeah, occasionally. Yeah.
I just always wondered because, I think writers today would think that you'd be like, oh, God damn it, the network, and they're telling us to do this and all that. But in the 80s, was there also kind of a feeling of like, we got it. we got our very special episode. We got our Emmy nomination. Like, there had to be a little of that you were like, we're going for the fucking award with this, right? Like, as much as people joke about the very special episode, you guys are writing them going, I'm getting that fucking statue, right?
Well, first of all, there's no television writer that ever thought a special episode was special. That is a network phrase. In fact, we would probably, feel that we were put upon if we were assigned to write the special episode.
Yeah.
So
it's just so funny to me because, especially Emily and I, we would have grown up watching a lot of these very special episodes. And the big deal was that Seinfeld said no special episodes, and they put an end to that. And I tell people to this day that Seinfeld is, in my opinion, responsible for two things, which is one, the death of the multi-camera sitcom, which is coming back now, but for a while it started to really hurt the multi-camera sitcom, and also hurting the earnestness of sitcoms, right? Like that there are no very special episodes. The very few try to tackle these issues and all that, because Seinfeld said, we're not going to do that. And they kind of mocked it to where every sitcom started saying, we're not going to do shows like that either.
I'm not sure I agree. I think that the series still do it. They just don't label it that way.
Right.
But they still internally, they'll do an episode where a certain character dies or a certain character is raped or something like that. And it's essentially the same thing. But I want to go back to something else you said. I guess we're talking about sitcoms now. I didn't know we were going to do that this week. But when you talk about how shows change the trajectory of that particular art form, the great example to me was, in the 70s, you had some really good half-hour comedies interspersed with some very fluffy cotton candy stuff. But you had Barney Miller, you had MASH, you had Taxi. But there was I believe it was 1979, Mork and Mindy came on the air. And Mork and Mindy essentially was a satire of half-hour comedies. It was so broad and so goofy that you knew you were watching a television show. And I think Mork and Mindy actually destroyed the half-hour business until 1984, when Cosby was able to come back and do those heartfelt family-style stories that brought people back into the idea of following characters that were believable again.
Yeah, that's true, though.
Not that I want to build any monuments to Bill Cosby. I clearly don't. But I always thought that was a very interesting time in half hours, because there were no other successful sitcoms when Mork and Mindy was on the air. It was pretty much the only one.
Wait.
Yeah.
What about Alf? What about Small Wonder?
But now you're going into like 1986, 87. So he's talking about 80, 81.
Oh.
That's like a lifetime.
80, 81,
right?
82. Yeah.
Mr. Belvedere.
Well, if you call those successful.
I want to know what Emily thinks, because Emily, I know that Emily, you're also a writer, but I also know that you're a bit of a connoisseur of pop culture. Like, all the shows from all the generations, all that. What do you think about the evolution of the sitcom, like I'm talking about it?
The Mork and Mindy thing was interesting. I've never thought of that, and I think that's correct. That's a great observation. I think the British Office changed modern sitcoms more than Seinfeld, in my opinion. Like, that really took away.
I didn't even think of that. That's a really good point.
I agree. It is a very good point. The Office did take, and I'm now thinking about the American Office, of course, built off the British sitcom, which was a far superior show, but The Office was a great American sitcom. That, again, took sitcoms to another level. And I think the half-hour art form is going to continue to get more sophisticated, more complex, getting closer and closer to reality. I think that that's just the arc of the evolution of that art form. It's going to continue. I happen to think that we're in another renaissance of half-hour comedy, but now it's mostly streaming or HBO and Showtime.
Well, and I think, like I said, there's something to be said about, for a long time, it's been the single camera, no studio audience thing. Emily, you and I are just slightly apart age-wise, as in like my generation, it's all about the multicam studio audience, and you're more towards what do you think? Do you prefer the single cam without the studio audience, and do you think that the multicam is going to come back? What do you think?
A laugh track is jarring to me. It almost interrupts the show to me at times. But I think it also depends on the show. I mean, a lot of people hate on Big Bang Theory, but when you break it down to a classic style situational comedy, it does it perfectly. I mean, that to me is the genre, and it was a big hit. And I don't think that style is going to completely disappear, because there is something about it that's like, when it's done well, it's still good. But it is jarring to watch with a laugh track. And I can watch it, but it does take me kind of a while to almost learn to ignore the laughter, kind of, just not to be like, whoa, what was that? But yeah, I don't know. But
Kevin, as a sitcom writer who wrote in the height of the laugh track era, as Emily would call it, but you wrote, Kevin made a face just now as in blah, 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 like I'm hoity-toity, but we're not in the 80s, from 1980 to 1990, there weren't single camera sitcoms. It just wasn't a thing, right? So what about you? Like, do you look at shows and go, oh my God, I wouldn't want to write this unless I were writing it for the audience, the studio audience or whatever? Or do you like the single camera stuff more? As a writer, which one attracts you more?
Well, first of all, let me say that when I was writing, we weren't using a laugh track. We were using a live audience that we filmed in front of. And
I shouldn't say laugh track. I didn't mean to say that. I just meant to say
you meant live laughter.
Live laughter. Yeah. And I think laugh track has begun. It's kind of replaced when people just mean you hear the sound of the laughter there. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean live laughter.
Yeah.
No, I actually prefer it without laughter. I think that the evolution that started, if not absolutely with The Office, certainly that was kind of a fountainhead of when people started to realize, oh, you can tell a very funny story without hearing laughter. I prefer it much more that way, yeah.
Interesting.
By the way, 2 more days. It's my 1-year anniversary of having landed in Texas. But anyways, let's not belabor that. Let's not make this about me. We want to thank everybody for listening to the show. Emily, thank you so much for doing this. I really enjoyed having you on.
Oh, thank you. I enjoyed being on. So thank you for having me, guys.
And if you enjoy what we do here, please follow us on Twitter at MPU Podcast and on Instagram at MPU Fan Club. And don't forget to share our link on your Facebook timeline so your friends can discover us as well. And we want to thank you for putting up with our technical problems. Until next time, this is Kevin Kelton, Ward Anderson, Emily Galati, and a little bit of Greg Matusak saying thanks, and we'll see you next time.